I said, and I say today, that Chapter 40B affordable housing program has been the biggest financial scandal in the last 20 years in Massachusetts. I mean, the thing that bothers me about Chapter 40B, I hate when people rip off other people with the government power behind them. And in this case, millions of dollars have been made by people who have been able to very adroitly manipulate the system and get away with it. And if somebody goes in with careful scrutiny, honestly, looking at it objectively, you will see no question that the money has been taken away from the people in these cities and towns. I'm just so completely convinced of this. The record is showing this. I'm very frustrated by it. Our office is nonpartisan. I think that 40B was a well-intended reform when it was adopted in 1969. But what's happened is it's an example of a policy where the vote's taken and then nobody's watching it. They let it run amok, and it's been a major, expensive example of mismanagement in government. We went in and did a comprehensive review. One of the first things we did was we asked the state agency for a list of all the 40B projects, but they did not have that list. There was no list. We asked for a list of the projects, 40B projects that have been completed, which have ever been cost certified. In other words, the state is supposed to look at those projects and give all profits above 20% to the city or town. So we wanted to see the paperwork. We asked for all the information to be provided to us. And that's when we found out that in about 3/4 of the cases, they had never even done a cost certification.
Right.
So it was kind of a project on autopilot, except the direction of it was being controlled, in this case, by the developers and banks that were lending the money. What we found was that 6 of those had a series of very serious problems, and we concluded that those developers and those projects owed the communities $7 million. We have made reports on those. Those reports have resulted in a series of actions by the towns to recover the money. And for many years it was okay, but what happened was about 15 years ago, this became the subject of a feeding frenzy among developers who came in and started to basically take a system that was not regulated and abuse it. And what happened was millions of dollars. We've estimated $100 million was misappropriated, but I think that is a conservative estimate. Yeah, I've been frankly very disappointed with the progress that's being made on 40B. The state agency that's in charge of it, that you mentioned, Senator which is called DHCD, has really, I think, not been advancing towards real reform. Many of the reforms that they suggested were actually would have made the situation much worse. So, in other words, if our office, the Inspector General's office, had said there's a problem with speeding on the Mass Pike, and they said, now, no problem, we're raising the speed limit to 90, now we don't have a problem. That was a good equivalent, only actually much worse, because in this case, one of the things that they did was they barred the towns from having a role in monitoring these abuses. When I heard this, everybody in the Inspector General's office was just ecstatic.
Oh, I'm sure they're ecstatic with all that extra work that you had to do.
No, genuinely, because the thing about 40B,
I think I got one. There was one member of the Senate that voted against it.
Yeah, I'm just amazed, and because you have been fighting this fight for a long time, but to see the vote actually go down the way with a big victory, and I thought that was very significant. The bottom line is it would have been great for that to have gone through.
Anytime we want to give the awesome power to allow local developers to circumvent local zoning, there has to be government oversight. And that's been what's most upsetting to me, is to see on the side of being a local official who fought a couple 40Bs for years, and then coming up at the legislature and seeing the same thing you said about the Housing Committee hearing last week, where people are framing it either you have to be entirely for it or entirely against it, and there's very little discussion of saying how do we make this bill work in a manner that's in the best public interest.